Between the EPA rulings this week and secondary sanctions, it is a stuffed week. Buckle up and stay tuned to the Energy Newsbeat Daily Stand-Up Weekend Edition. Is Trump stalling solar and wind projects? Or are people waking up to the fact that China has embedded kill switches and spy products in the renewable energy components? You can't buy this kind of entertainment. I had fun on this one. Michael, this story was actually published from Felicity Broadstack on oilprice.com. She wrote, "Who's stalling wind and solar?" And I went, okay, let's take a look at what she has to say. She says United States President Donald Trump announced plan to tighten federal permitting on restricting solar and wind. And she goes on, but what she does not mention is what Secretary Burgum just pointed out this week. I mean, this week, he points out, holy smokes, we're prioritizing secure supply chains and reliable base load to unleash American energy. And in this video clip, in this Substack article I put in, Doug goes, oh, and they've been bugging all of the wind and solar equipment to have kill switches. And I had published that in May. And so this is absolutely a hoot. And so when you sit back and take a look, is Felicity at Oil Price right in saying Trump's delaying it? No, he's going, hold up. Let's get some real supply issues fixed. Let's put in reliable energy and not have any backdoors for hackers. And when you take a look at the patterns of espionage, let's not forget the spy balloons. Let's also not forget in 2024, I wrote, could China hack our electric grid? In 4 words, yes, and how soon? And the real question was Mayorkas in on it? That went nuts on the story as well. So this is not something we've been sitting on our hands kind of going, oh, wait a minute, this may or may not happen. But it brings up a huge question. The erosion of confidence highlights a broader geopolitical reality. Renewable energy isn't just about sustainability, it's about sovereignty. For China, the hidden radios and backdoors may have secured short-term gains, but they've ultimately cost the long game in wind and solar dominance because we're going to find new supply chains.
I mean, I think you've laid out the circumstance very, very precisely and extremely well. You know, it's the unfortunate side of regulation. And this is where I don't go full libertarian or for anarchist like I think you do, Stu. I mean, there is a need for regulation.
Yeah.
Good regulation that is sounded in good policy and has the ability to be updated as new information comes in is the best type of regulation. And I love your last quote here. The lesson is clear. In an era of cyber threats, trust is the ultimate currency. And that's the key. We've got to trust that our energy supply chains are correct. Because, I mean, like you said, one bad actor getting into one part of our energy grid, and all of a sudden, a third of the United States is without power. I mean, it could be absolutely incredible. It could be scary. I mean, I don't think we can fully understand what it would be like a world if all of a sudden for 3 days we didn't have power. Woo!
Boom. Oops.
I'd be sweating. That's all I know.
There you go. Department of Interior secures a win for the American energy dominance safely and timely. I like this. This is partially a story of a resounding victory for American energy independence. The Department of Interior has successfully facilitated the restart of oil production at the Santa Ynez Unit, SYU, off the coast of California. But this is going to be all for naught, Michael. In 2026, they lose 20% of their refining capacity. So this is yay. Okay, now what are you going to do for me when Gavin Newsom's plans go through? They did just announce that California is trying to find a buyer for that one, which has never been done before. So I think Gavin Newsom knows they've pooped on the rug.
Well, I think Gavin Newsom understands he's pooped on the rug a bunch, but he's still trying to get his media tour out so that he can kick off his 2028 campaign. I mean, California is probably the epitome of terrible energy policy. We see it time and time again. I think, the interesting part that this points out is the lack of pipelines that are going across the Sierra Mountains, which on one hand is a massive, massive capital infrastructure project. On one hand is also there's some environmental things to worry about. I'm not, yes, we should be navigating our mountains. I don't think we should just be haphazardly laying pipelines in them though. So I think there's a fine line to bat there, but that truly isolates that market from the other parts of the United States, which forces them to import all their energy from people that don't have U.S. best interest at heart. I mean, it's really the thread between this line and the first article that you wrote. There's a line there.
Yep. You forgot Alaska. They were importing almost all of their oil from Alaska.
Yeah, they used to, at least.
Yes, until Gavin got in. Backlash against EU net zero regulations, Qatar to threaten cut LNG supplies. You can't buy this kind of entertainment. In a bold escalation of tensions over European Union's aggressive push to net zero emissions, Qatar has actually issued a stark warning. Comply with our demands or face a cutoff of vital LNG. This threat revealed in a leaked correspondence. Michael, this is critical because it impacts the United States. By Qatar, the world's third largest LNG exporter has no intention of bowing to the requirements of the net zero mob in the EU. And this is critical because we are going to follow this critical story because this is going to be impactful to the United States because President Trump may or may not, we don't know how he's handled the EU trade language yet. We're waiting for the paperwork. If he has not handled the horrific net zero language, this is going to be critical.
No, absolutely. And I think, we've talked for years now about Qatar breaking and trying to really control the global LNG trade. And I think it's interesting that now they're using that as a weapon in order to help placate counter, I should say, what the EU is trying to do with these aggressive pushes towards net zero. I find it's completely interesting. I love third paragraph. Qatar, the world's third largest LNG exporter, has no intention of bowing to these requirements. Here's the quote. Can I just read the quote?
Absolutely.
This is Qatari Energy Minister Saad Al-Kababi. Neither the state of Qatar nor Qatar Energy has any plans to achieve net zero in the near future. Oh, got him right where it hurts.
You got to love a good quote on that one. That one is not the IR guy of the week because he's speaking truth.
That is IR guy of the week.
Oh, okay. So he is the IR guy of the week speaking truth. I didn't understand that one.
Sometimes you get it for a nice slick lie. Sometimes you get it for the truth. Okay. We're giving it out this week for the truth.
For the truth. Overlooked vulnerability could cripple the America grid. Michael, we have talked about this before, but it's sneaking back up again. It's the transformers, baby. In an era where artificial intelligence and data centers are transforming the energy landscape around power grids, a silent yet potentially devastating threat, a fragile supply chain. We talked about this on yesterday's podcast with the additional products and loopholes and backdoors that China has put into the U.S. grid and global supplies in wind and solar stuff. This is the same thing for transformers. We are now at a 50 weeks in 2021 was what the essential device waiting list was, to an average of 127 weeks in some specialized units, taking, Michael, up to 4 years. This, right now, we only produce about 20% of the related equipment as needed for the electrical power and transmission systems. This is where people like the folks that we've talked to in the past really make a difference. Mark Lancaster was very apropos in the last podcast I did with Mark, and that is get hold of contractors like Mark that understand microgrids and how to redesign your requirements to a phased in approach. I cannot stress this enough right now. Start today. If you're a CEO, you have to go out and understand your power requirements to keep your business running because we got us a problem on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, I find it insane that the U.S. only produces about 20% of the transformers and related equipment needed for both electrical power and various transmission systems. We've also seen prices skyrocket 60 to 80% relative, or really since January of 2020. So pretty crazy.
And again, get a hold of the expertise. If you've got a question like that, shoot me a note and I want to visit with you. If you're a CEO and you're wanting these kind of questions, we also have Reese Energy Consulting, who absolutely can help source data centers and those kind of things for natural gas.
We'll be right back to the weekly recap. But first, guys, we got to pay the bills here. As always, guys, thank you for checking us out. www.energynewsbeat.com. Stu and the team, tremendous job keeping that website up to speed. Everything you need to know to be at the tip of the spear when it comes to the energy business. Hit the links in the description below for all the timestamps, links to the articles. You can also subscribe to our Substack, which is our daily newsletter, where you get a very bespoke article in your inbox every day talking about the energy transition, theenergynewsbeat.com. Also, shout out, thank you to Reese Energy Consulting for supporting the show, guys. www.reeseenergyconsulting.com. They are the best midstream consultants when it comes to anything that you might be able to do. If you need help, if you're two guys in a garage, if you're the largest publicly traded company in the world, they have the resources to help you, and they have clients ranging from, like I said, two guys in a garage all the way to the largest publicly traded companies. So if you're wondering if you're a fit, you are a fit. ReesEnergyConsulting.com. And finally, guys, invest in oil.energynewsbeat.com if you are interested in how to get into the oil and gas space when it comes to investing. We have our oil and gas portfolio survey where you fill out a couple forms, and we send you all the resources on what it looks like to invest, the different types, the different ways, all the amazing tax benefits, the monthly dividends that you get from investing. And then if you are even a good fit, we point you in the right direction. So that's investinoil.energynewsbeat.com. And now back to the show.
EPA releases proposal to rescind Obama-era endangerment findings, regulations that pave the way for the electrical vehicle mandates. If finalized, this proposal will undo the underpinning of the $1 trillion in costly regulations, and it will save more than $54 billion annually. When you take a look at this from the EPA, Lee Zeldin and the whole team of Doug Burgum and Secretary Chris Wright leading the pack, in Indianapolis, in an auto dealership in Indiana, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, Lee Zeldin, released the agency's proposal to rescind the 2009 endangerment finding. This is huge because this is the basis that the Obama administration has put in for a Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emission carbon taxes. The whole climate scheme is now coming unwrapped. Since the 2009 endangerment finding was issued, many have stated that the American people in auto manufacturing has suffered significant uncertainties and massive costs related to general regulations of greenhouse gases from vehicles and trucks. But it goes further than that. The gigantic new deal that the President Trump just struck with the EU could be in danger if the EU tries to hit the U.S. oil and gas companies with Scope 3 emission stuff coming around the corner. And this is going to play into it like you wouldn't believe. With this proposal, the Trump EPA is proposing to end 16 years of uncertainty for automakers and American consumers. And again, this is reaching beyond automakers. It's going to go to the oil companies as well, said EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. In our work so far, many stakeholders have told me that the Obama and Biden EPA's twisted law ignored the precedent and warped science to achieve their preferred ends and stick American families with hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes every single year. We heard a loud and clear concern the EPA's greenhouse emissions standards themselves, not carbon dioxide, which the finding never assessed independently, was the real threat to Americans' livelihoods if finalized, rescinding the endangerment finding and resulting in regulations that would end $1 trillion or more of hidden taxes and American businesses. This is huge. I cannot begin to tell you how important that this is. This is from Governor Mike Braun. The Obama EPA used regulations as a political tool to hurt American competitiveness with results to show for it today. Today's announcement is a win for consumer choice, common sense, and American energy independence. President Trump, Secretary Wright, and Administrator Zeldin are returning the EPA to its proper role, and I'm proud to say that Indiana is the place to make this announcement, because our state is proof we can protect our environment and support American jobs. This is cool. Here's how important this is. The EU deal struck, and they are going to try to impose Scope 3 emissions on the United States. That is going to undermine all the great things that President Trump is trying to do right now with maintaining energy dominance around the world. So this is going to tee up I guarantee you, Secretary Chris Wright and the team to get proposed legislation in front of President Trump in order to go ahead and stop the EU from charging us on climate taxes, on a carbon capture, on all of the other kind of greenhouse gas emissions taxes that they are proposing and are trying to enforce on the United States. This is critical. Well done, Lee Zeldin. We are very proud of you and Secretary Chris Wright. China shifts to fuel exports due to higher margins in their downstream sector. In a significant pivot with the global energy landscape, China, the world's largest importer and refiner, has ramped up its exports of refined petroleum products, including gasoline and diesel, as domestic demand softens and overseas margins become more lucrative. This shift, accelerating in 2025, reflects broader economic and structural changes in China's energy sector. As refiners capitalize on export opportunities, questions arise about the implications of internal consumption and crude oil. This is critical when you sit back and take a look at this. China's fuel exports are finding eager buyers across the Asia Pacific and beyond, with regional hubs absorbing the bulk of the shipments. Singapore remains the dominant destination for gasoline, including for 73% of Southeast Asian imports from China. Pretty important. Philippines also getting for diesel, which was 1.1 million in the first half of the year, and then Mexico and Hong Kong. Now, when you take a look at how LNG imports and crude oil imports, I have a chart in here, and you take a look at how the chart in here provided by Sandstone Asset Management, you can see that as China's oil demand has gone, so has the oil price and demand around the world. Now, you've heard me say we are going to be in that $80 range. I mean, it could be 75, it could be 85, it could be in that range, but that's the sweet spot for continuing investment into oil so that we can keep the balance. You always have the peaks and valleys that Michael talks about. But if India can grow more than China can decline, that is going to solidify the global demand, and we are going to see great oil prices for investors. Oil companies are going to be able to give great money back. You're going to be able to keep that sweet spot. Gasoline will be able to be still in the same range that it is now, even though it is the high peak season right now. It seems to be a very good balancing spot in there. And drill baby drill is no longer drill baby drill. It's drill baby when fiscally responsible. As Steve Reese has said, we're seeing the molecule demand change, and people are drilling a lot more for natural gas because natural gas is needed to drive our great energy dominance in the AI space. So $70 West Texas Intermediate returns as Trump targets India over Russian oil ties, the weak link in President Trump's plans. This is absolutely a very important story. The U.S. Department of Commerce reported a 3% annualized growth rate for the second quarter, which is huge. Well done, President Trump, getting our economy back on order. However, this uptick comes against a backdrop of escalating U.S.-India friction as President Donald Trump ramps up pressure on New Delhi over its substantial imports of Russian crude. Trump's strategy aims to cripple Russia's war funding in Ukraine through secondary sanctions, and I have been warning about the alarms on targeting India would be backfire spectacularly, exposing a crucial, vulnerable problem with his broader geopolitical playbook. You take a look at the chart on this article on our Substack. India's crude oil imports by country, Russia's 45% of India's imports. And if we put a secondary sanction on this, it is going to trigger in about 3 different ways. India's refineries also sell gasoline and diesel back to the EU. That's going to spike and rotate up higher prices there. Oh, who else also buys from India? We just tracked a tanker for California buying diesel from Russian oil going to India and then went to California. This is absolutely going to be a gigantic disaster. President Trump, if you or your staff are listening to this podcast, do not listen to Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham should be ignored. Do not put secondary sanctions on India for this purpose. I've got a chart in here on how it works out. Brent prices to go to $90 to $100. That's a possibility. Russia's response, potential revenue loss of 10 to 20 billion. But the dark fleet is so well established, he can get around it again. All you're going to do is cripple your relationship with India, and it is a problem. Do not listen to them. You have not been negotiating with President Putin. Let me explain this one critical piece. We do business with China, and they have put all these horrific problems in our grid equipment, in our solar panels, and our windmills, and they could take out potentially a significant chunk of our grid. But yet we still do business with China. President Trump, go do business with President Putin. Get him to the table by doing what you do best. Do a deal with him. Work out how we can do joint deals in oil exploration in the Arctic so that we know we can control and minimize the impact of oil exploration in the Arctic with Russia. I would rather do business with Russia than I would do business with China. If you sanction India, it is going to go very badly. What is the future of the United States grid? Well, it involves a decentralized management, AI, and lots of privately held microgrids. I had fun putting this article together. And when you sit back and take a look, we're looking at a transformation of the United States grid, and the fast-moving Trump administration has taken a wrecking ball to take down the Obama-era regulations and handicap placed on the grid managers. How this is going to shake out is we're still trying to figure this out. I want to give Secretary Chris Wright a shout out because he is addressing the issues as they are coming up. Deloitte estimates that the U.S. AI data center power demand will balloon from 4 gigawatts in 2024 to 123 gigawatts by 2035, more than a 30-fold increase. That is ginormous, even by President Trump standards. EVs are another major factor with widespread adoption expected to not as a significant load as charging infrastructure expands. That one I'm going to put a hold on and say only if the price comes down and if new technology is coming along for batteries. However, this surge has challenges. 104 gigawatts of planned power plant retirements, mostly coal by 2030, against the 22 gigawatt of new firm base load, which is part nuclear and mostly natural gas. You've got another 100 some odd gigawatts of wind and solar that are now looking like most of that 100 may not get installed because they're not going to be profitable without the subsidies. So we got us a gigawatt problem. Where's Christopher Lloyd when you need him? Because we were sitting there going, holy cow, 1721 gigawatts. Anyway, tech giants like, I don't have Michael to tell me to cut, and that was a horrible joke, but tech giants like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Meta are driving this trend with investments up to about 10 billion per facility to meet AI demands. Watch for this: decentralized grid management and a shift toward resilience. Here's what's going to happen. In the natural gas space, you have ERCOT, which is in the next story. We're going to go into that here in just a little bit. But you're going to see AI and data centers start fanning out and looking for natural gas plants that could be taken offline and they can be put behind a private meter for their data center only. Or they're going to find natural gas and then they're going to drop in their own generators and line them up. But you're going to need somebody that has definitely expertise in being able to redesign your microgrid. Call us if you've got that kind of a problem. Where investors can take advantage is huge. I'm watching NextEra Energy. I don't give investment advice, but I'll tell you what I'm looking at. GE Vernova, GEV, as well as Tesla. I'm looking at Tesla because they've got a new factory out here that they're looking at building battery in, I believe, the Detroit area. Pretty big from announcement out there. I believe Stanislav from Oil Price put that out. Outstanding article. So when we take a look, you're going to look at the new grid as decentralized, and you're going to have a lot of it, businesses putting their own power plants on there. So all these dedicated sources are now going to cause some other issues, as natural gas pipelines are going to be dedicating pipeline to a data center that would not be going out to the consumers, or you're going to have consumers not have access to steady, solid power, and they're going to be left to having all this wind and all this solar that is absolutely horrific as far as trying to balance it. So you're going to have a whole new way that the grid balancing authorities are going to have to look at. Is it behind a meter or is it out in here able to be used? It's a complicated process, and I guarantee it's going to get ugly.